it's great meeting you here in New York.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot, and it's really great to meet Emmanuel for the first time here in New York.
Can you imagine? I met U-Zyn here in New York. We've been talking for a while, and we've been exchanging notes on what he is building. And I'm going to have a much more detailed conversation with him in a place that's not as cold as here, right? Yeah.
Yes.
In mapping how the future of finance will play out, I draw extensively from young entrepreneurs like U-Zyn Chua. While there are many thinkers and consultants who pontificate in abstraction, it is entrepreneurs like U-Zyn who run actual businesses that generate real income in decentralized finance. They are at the frontier of the industry and stake their livelihoods in knowing what works and what doesn't. U-Zyn is the co-founder of a decentralized platform called Cake Defi. Amazing conversation last night over dinner and over the phone. So it's good to meet you here in New York. And I want to capture just two very important points from our conversation. Firstly, where do you think FTX went wrong? And secondly, this whole idea of tokens, how important is it to DeFi? Okay, but before we go into that, tell me a little bit about Cake DeFi, the organization that you built, and why are tokens not an important part of what you do? They are important. It's just that it's not what you do. Secondly, your business model, that is how you generate income in DeFi. This is fascinating stuff. Okay, explain a little bit to me about Cake DeFi first.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Super great to meet you here in New York. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Cake Defi. We've been talking a lot with Emmanuel. So what we do at Cake Defi is we are a platform that allows regular users who are not able to understand like blockchain or smart contracts and things like that to allow them to get into DeFi in a way that's very, very easily understandable. So you can choose which DeFi protocols, which DeFi projects you want to get into to generate yield, and it's presented in a very simple to understand way.
And from that, how do you make your money, your income?
So Cake DeFi it's a service provider. So when our user generates return from these DeFi projects, we charge a fee for the returns that they make. So generally it's about 10% that we take for the service fee that they make.
What's different between your business and FTX and Alameda Capital, but more FTX? FTX says that it's an exchange.
Yes. The key difference is FTX is insolvent and we are solvent.
Not intended, but I see where you're coming from. Okay, on the technology front, yes. on the business model.
Yes, I know what you mean. I just want to make that clear. FTX is an exchange, whereas we're not an exchange. So FTX runs a service where you deposit a fund and then they encourage you to trade. Therefore, they can generate more fees from there. And also another thing on FTX is that they have their own token, which is called FTT, whereas at Cake DeFi, we have no tokens. Our revenue derives from the rewards that our user make. So some of that could be in Bitcoin, some of that could be in ETH, some of that could be in other project tokens that our users make. But we do not issue these thokens. So the issue with the FTX and FTT is that when you have your own token, you put in your own books and you control 70-80% of that token liquidity. You cannot be saying that they are worth the book value that you see on an exchange, because there's no way you can liquidate them at the spot price that you see today. And I think that's where they go a little bit wrong there.
Okay, what you're saying is essentially the tragedy of the FTX story is not the technology, it's the balance sheet.
Definitely not technology. Like blockchain,
right?
DeFi works super well there.
And in your case, it so happened that you take a conservative view on your balance sheet. You don't fully value all of the tokens that you carry. That's a personal discipline.
Yeah, I did share with Emmanuel last night that on our balance sheet, so there's two things that we do. So part of our revenue fees coming from tokens from other DeFi projects. So we either try to convert them into fiat or stablecoin as we get them. but in reality, we can't convert all of them also as fast as we could. So when we have those tokens on our balance sheet, we greatly impair them. The reason of that is because we always need to ask ourselves how real, how when there's a crunch, when we need to call in funds, when there's a crunch in this economy, how real, how fast can we convert this into fiat for us to pay whatever debt that we had. So usually it's way less than what many people think, especially crypto market is actually kind of small when you talk about these small tokens that you have. Even for FTT, you look at the trading volume, it's actually quite huge, but when there's a crunch, you can see the crash happens in mere hours, the crashing of like 50%, 70% of the price. So it's very hard for you to realize any spot price there. So for us, we impair tokens at even as high as at 90% or even more, because these are the like we our opinion is that if there's a crunch, that's kind of the value that we could get. As if you hold a significant amount of, let's say 10% of a token, how much can you really liquidate that when there's a market crunch? Like way lower than the hit that you're gonna take is way more than 10% that you hold. Could be even like 80% discount from what you actually perceive that it would be when market is stable.
Where does the discipline come from? Where did it come from? Is it normal industry practice now to impair and to value tokens, at a discount, or is it not yet a discipline? Is it something that can be regulated, or is it self-regulation within the industry?
Right now, the why we did it was because we want to be honest on that. Like my co-founder and I are serial entrepreneurs. We've run businesses for decades, and for us, we are always very real with our balance sheet and the way that we it's our discipline as well. We do not want to inflate things that we feel that are not real. So there's no like industry practice that you have to impair. So I mean, I can't say for everyone, but I do assume that a lot of our competitors or sites similar to ours are not impairing cryptos on their balance sheets.
So the question here is, does your auditor help you with that? Or is it an instruction that you give your auditors? I just want to get a sense of where is the conservative approach to valuation, as you've described, come from, and how can it become an industry standard practice?
It's actually coming in from our own practice. It's coming from
You as an entrepreneur.
our Julian and myself as a founding team, and also our CFO as well, actually give us the advice to impair the crypto that way, and we are the one that has to kind of tell the auditor that's why we impair it.
So the auditor takes his advice from you, because
they were asking us why do you impair them so much.
Okay, because this is good practice, and it's something that can be easily regulated. Now, there's a second part to this, which is the whole idea of tokenomics, which is the way in which tokens are created and then scaled, and new users come on board, and all this only works if the valuation of the token keeps increasing, right? Now, how should tokenomics work, you think?
Tokenomics, so the last 1 year or so especially, tokenomics has been dominated by this inflationary model where you're gonna protocol is going to print a lot more tokens to entice people to use your project. So some of them are giving out as high as like 500% if you provide liquidity to a project. So how that 500% comes from basically by emitting new token or by printing new tokens. So it's an inflationary model for that. So that now we've seen that it's not a sustainable model in the long run. So DeFi itself is not dead. DeFi itself actually solves a lot of real world problems that takes away intermediary on financial transactions. So, but on the token itself, if you can, it doesn't mean that, there's token itself, you have to always ask, is there a need for that? And if there's a need for it, how can it be used in a utility way to help on that transaction, like let's say pay for commission or things like that, rather than inflationary.
How many players are like there using your model?
when we first started, okay, we started with staking. So on the staking part, there are quite a few staking providers that are providing the same thing. But on the other part, I think side they are focusing strictly on yield on DeFi integration alone without exchange. I think there's very few that are providing this similar kind of model. I mean, to put it simply, the one that operates in strictly centralized DeFi model, I think we're the only one that do it that way. So there are increasingly site like exchanges that are doing a bit more of that, but they are more like a mixed model. Like ours is a very pure centralized DeFi model where users are only getting to DeFi. There's no exchanges and all that. So I don't see any other sites out there that are doing that today.
And if you don't take a position on crypto, or if you don't trigger the use, how do you create the business in the first place and then generate income?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, you ask yourself what do you want to do here. So for us, our answer is we want to run a fintech business. Our value is delivering this great platform where user can get into DeFi projects and DeFi protocols easily and generate yield through this DeFi protocol. So what we then do, if we present ourselves that way, that means that what we can do is either we find more reputable big DeFi projects that we integrate more and more into our platform, therefore having a good catalog of DeFi projects that they can get into through our site, or we find projects with a high yield on the DeFi side. Therefore, because we take, let's say, 10% of the yield that they make on this DeFi project, some of them giving, let's say, 50%, we take 10%, so that gives us like 5% on the principal that the user have on our site. So therefore, we derive revenue from there. So when we position ourselves that way, that's kind of how we scale. We either broaden our catalog or we find projects that are giving high yield but reputable projects that are giving high yield.
So why doesn't that make you an exchange?
There's no exchange of funds between user. There's no like order book. There's no exchange of funds between our users. So for us, our users come to our site. You deposit Bitcoin. You want to generate yield on a Bitcoin. You're gonna put your Bitcoin into a DeFi protocol. Let's say giving you like 15% return in a year, and then once you want to withdraw, you're gonna withdraw from that protocol, take back your Bitcoin from there. That's it. There's no, you can't exchange from. You can't like say I want to sell Bitcoin at 20K or 18K or whatever. You can't do that on our site. There's no such function, and just enticing people to go to your platform.
So this mechanics of tokenomics, which is that it increases, it only becomes more valuable when it increases in value, also applies to NFTs, to gaming, and the only way in which they can create greater usage and critical mass is by enabling the original owners to want to part with it because the next owner is willing to pay a higher rate. What is the alternative to this model?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for GameFi, or what we describe as a like game in like metaverse, when there's a finance involved in GameFi, a lot of them also coming from the same inflationary model of tokens, where you join a game, you play a certain time, you do a certain task, and you're gonna get new tokens that are printed out for you, and you can sell them for money, or find the next buyer that could pay you for that. But that itself is not sustainable. In the long run, we do see that in GameFi world, a lot of people, the games are not fun. People are playing it for that money that they farm, and it's not fun. So if we go back to the original idea about blockchain, about Bitcoin, when Satoshi created it, so Bitcoin itself is also created with a similar model where in order for you to start a project, you need to entice people to come in. So Bitcoin itself prints actually 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes to miner that's willing to mine Bitcoin. So at that time, it may seem like a very similar model. It's inflationary, trying to entice people to do something for Bitcoin. But the difference there is that it achieves another thing on that, which we don't see on GameFi today, which is that the miner itself are coming in not only to get those tokens that are printed for them, but it also serves the whole greater purpose for the whole ecosystem One is that it brings in new participants, and second thing is greatly enhances the security and the robustness of Bitcoin
The more people
ecosystem
trade, the more, yeah.
to the point where Bitcoin today is so secure and so big that the hash rate is so high that not a single entity in the world, not even government, can overtake Bitcoin. So this model is actually helps achieve a greater purpose. So when you need a token, when you need to emit token, you always think about you need to think about what you want to achieve with this whole ecosystem rather than just trying to promote a project, and that part is not sustainable because once people are getting new token, they're going to sell it and it's going to crash the whole token price.
At which point will DeFi become less geek and more mainstream?
That's a super great question. That actually is the fundamental of the mission that Cake Defi is started, because our strong belief that DeFi it's a lot more, its use is way beyond geeks. So our mission there is to bring DeFi to everyone else that are beyond just tech savvy people, and personally, I see that there's a space for that, and there's a lot more demand as well on the everyday people who want to control their own finance. So I do see this taking place over the next 1 or 2 years. I think as DeFi gets more mainstream, gets more approachable by everyday users. It's more like a traditional, like banks, if you would, that you see that you're gonna deposit money, you get a rate, and then you can do whatever you want. You walk into a bank. So I do see DeFi getting to that stage in the next 1 or 2 years.
You know, one of the progressions and the evolution that we missed in finance is the API revolution, right? When the API revolution started with cloud and as the basic infrastructure, IT companies like Microsoft, Adobe took onto it and swam like fish in water, which is to say that they opened their platform. You take a company like Salesforce; it's got 50,000 API developers at one time. I mean, it might be 100,000 now. And banks instead restricted what they meant by APIs. And today, that agenda, and by the way, I mentioned this in my book, okay, that banks missed the API revolution. Now you have DeFi, which encourages users to build their own applications, right? And in fact, your own business will start to look more successful the more users you have who not just trade and stake, but also build their own applications, right?
Yep.
So now, what's happening on that front?
I completely subscribe to the same view there. I think finance, there's been too protective of their like technology or their competency that it's a very close approach. Even the terms like API was when it was used in finance, I completely agree with you, Emmanuel, that it's used in a very restrictive manner, unlike any other technology out there. So I think like for blockchain and for DeFi, the whole thing got so big because it's permissionless. Anyone wants to build anything can build on that. And also the reason why internet got so big as well, because I mean web itself, like invented by Tim Berners-Lee, and he doesn't protect it, that you need his permission to do something. It just opens up the world, and that's how web got so big. So I think this DeFi movement is where we are today, where we see a great innovation is happening in this space, where a lot more really great researcher, great tech builders are building great stuff on the DeFi space. So what you see in the news are a lot of hypes and all this like inflationary stuff, but there's real people that are building a lot more protocols and a lot more great things on DeFi world, and we're really seeing a lot of great innovations happening from there. For example, like automated market making exchange, for example, where you don't need to have actively market makers doing the order book and all that. So these are great innovations coming from DeFi, and we'll see a lot more happening over in the time to come. And for us on Cake DeFi, yeah, I love that you summed that. So we have this great infrastructure that we've built so far that does really work really well for us on the retail side, where our users are able to get into DeFi, are able to also get the transparency of DeFi. So what we're trying to do is to enable these building blocks so that companies and innovators and developers can build stuff easily on a blockchain, on DeFi, with the fundamental building blocks that we already have, so they don't have to spend time building on the things that are already solved, but to work on things moving ahead based on building blocks that are already there, so you can skip past that and do more greater things.
Amazing. That's how fascinating this conversation has been. I'm going to have a much deeper conversation with U-Zyn, and and as you can imagine, I'm learning a lot from this man, and very good to catch you here in New York.
Likewise, very happy to meet Emmanuel here.
Yeah, great.
Finally in person. Yes.
I've been here to say that I'm spending the evening with geeky Chua U-Zyn and the both from Singapore here in New York. Lovely evening.